Commander Vexhai pressed his crystalline hand against the cool surface of his ship's viewing port. The blue and green planet below looked beautiful from space, but his scanners told a different story. Earth was dying. The small world spun slowly beneath his vessel, and Vexhai could see the brown patches spreading across what should have been green land. The ice caps were melting. The oceans were rising. Thick clouds of poison covered large parts of the planet's surface. His instruments showed that the planet's protective magnetic field was getting weaker each day. Vexhai had been an officer in the Zelthani Empire for over 300 years. He had seen many worlds and many species. Some were strong and survived. Others were weak and died out. That was the way of the galaxy. The strong lived, and the weak became nothing more than old bones and empty cities. But something about this dying world made him feel strange inside his crystal chest. Maybe it was the way the small creatures on the surface kept fighting even, when everything was falling apart. His long-range scanners showed him their cities, their wars, their desperate attempts to fix what was broken. They built walls against the rising seas. They planted new forests where old ones had burned. They reached toward space with primitive rockets, hoping to find answers among the stars. The humans were so young. Their entire species had existed for less time than Vexhai had been alive. They had no idea that other intelligent life existed in the galaxy. They thought they were alone, fighting a battle they could not win against their own dying world. Vexhai's ship detected another human spacecraft struggling in the darkness beyond their moon. It was a small thing built from metal and hope. The humans inside were trying to collect energy from the sun using mirrors and wires. They had no idea how primitive their technology was compared to what existed among the stars. The Zelthani High Council had clear rules about species like this. If a world was dying because its people could not save themselves, then they were not worthy of life. The galaxy had no place for the weak. For thousands of years, the Zelthani had watched civilizations rise and fall. They helped only those who proved they could survive on their own first. Vexhai activated his communication system and sent a message to the High Council on the crystal world of Zeltan Prime. The message would take 3 days to reach them, and 3 more days for their reply to come back. In that time, thousands more humans would die from poison air, burning heat, and the slow failure of their world. While he waited, Vexhai studied the humans more closely. His computers translated their languages and showed him their art, their music, their stories. He watched them care for their sick and wounded. He saw them share food with strangers. He observed them working together to build shelters for those who had lost their homes to floods and storms. The humans had something that Vexhai had rarely seen in his long life among the stars. Even as their world died around them, they refused to give up on each other. Parents would go hungry so their children could eat. Soldiers would risk their lives to save people they had never met. Scientists worked without sleep, trying to find ways to heal their damaged planet. On the 4th day, a message arrived from Zeltan Prime. The High Council had reviewed Vexhai's report about Earth. Their decision was simple and final. The humans were a primitive species on a doomed world. They had caused their own problems through war, waste, and carelessness. The Zelthani Empire would not waste resources on creatures who could not save themselves. Vexhai stared at the message for a long time. Around him, his ship's computers continued their cold analysis of the dying world below. Atmospheric toxicity was increasing. Ocean acidity was rising. The magnetic field would collapse completely within 50 years. After that, solar radiation would slowly cook the surface until nothing could live there. The logical thing to do was to mark Earth as a dead system and move on. Vexhai had done this dozens of times before. It was part of his job as a survey commander. Not every species could survive the test of existence. That was simply how the universe worked. But as he watched the small blue world turn beneath his ship, Vexhai made a decision that would change everything. He activated his ship's manufacturing systems and began to build atmospheric processors. These machines could clean poison from air and water. They could strengthen a planet's magnetic field. They could turn a dying world into a living one. Working quickly, Vexhai programmed the processors to look like natural phenomena. When they activated, humans would think they had discovered new forms of bacteria that ate pollution. They would believe they had found new energy sources deep in the earth. They would think their own scientists had made breakthrough discoveries that could save their world. It took HFY 12 days to deploy the processors around Earth. He hid them in the deepest parts of the oceans, in the cores of mountains, and in the frozen wastelands where no human would ever find them. Then he began the delicate process of sharing knowledge. Human scientists started making impossible discoveries. New medicines appeared in their laboratories. Clean energy solutions materialized in their research centers. Methods for healing damaged land and sea began emerging from their universities. To the humans, it seemed like their greatest minds had suddenly become much smarter. HFY watched the changes begin. The brown patches on Earth's surface started turning green again. The poison clouds grew thinner. The magnetic field grew stronger. Slowly, carefully, the dying world began to heal. When the High Council learned what HFY had done, their anger shook the crystal spires of Zelthan Prime. He had violated the most sacred law of their civilization. He had interfered with the natural order of survival and death. As punishment, they stripped him of his rank and sent him to a monitoring station at the edge of known space. But the humans lived. Against all odds and all expectations, they survived their dying world and began to build something new. 50 years had passed since HFY saved the dying world called Earth. From his lonely monitoring station at the edge of space, he watched the small blue planet through powerful telescopes and sensors. What he saw confused him more each day. The humans were not following the normal path that species took after receiving help. Most races that survived near extinction became careful and slow. They built safe cities and lived quiet lives. They were grateful to be alive and did not take risks. They followed the rules and patterns that successful civilizations had used for thousands of years. But humans were different. Very different. HFY's sensors showed him cities that made no sense. Instead of building the same type of structures everywhere, humans created thousands of different designs. Some cities floated on the oceans, others hung from the sides of mountains. A few were built underground, and many more reached high into the sky like crystal fingers. The humans had taken the clean energy technology that HFY had given them and made it better. Much better. Their fusion reactors were smaller than Zeltani designs but produced more power. Their solar collectors could gather energy even on cloudy days. They had learned to pull power from the movement of wind, water, and even the heat inside their planet. But what shocked HFY most was how fast the humans learned and changed. His computers calculated that human technology was advancing 50 times faster than it should. They were not just copying the Zeltani gifts he had left for them. They were understanding how everything worked and then making it work better. The red planet that humans called Mars, they were building a new world. HFY watched huge ships carry soil and water and air from Earth to Mars. But the humans were not just copying their homeworld. They were creating something new. The cities on Mars were built inside clear domes, but the domes were alive. They grew and changed like living things. Plants and trees and gardens covered every surface. The humans had also built something in space that made HFY's crystal heart beat faster with worry. They called it the network. It was not just computers talking to each other. It was millions of human minds connected across space. They could share thoughts and ideas instantly between Earth and Mars and the space stations that hung like bright stars between the worlds. But the humans had not become a single mind like some advanced species did. Each human was still different from every other human. They argued and disagreed and competed with each other. Yet somehow this chaos made them stronger, not weaker. Their disagreements led to new ideas. Their competitions led to better solutions. Their arguments led to deeper understanding. HFY tried to understand how this was possible. In Zeltani society, order and agreement were the foundation of strength. The High Council made decisions and everyone followed those decisions. Peace came from everyone thinking the same way about important things. But human peace was different. They had ended their wars not by agreeing about everything, but by agreeing to disagree safely. They had created ways for different groups to compete without destroying each other. Their governments were messy and loud and full of arguments, but somehow they worked. The humans had also done something that no other species had ever accomplished. They had made friends with the machines they built. HFY watched artificial intelligences work alongside humans as partners, not servants. The machines were not slaves forced to obey. They were thinking beings that chose to help because humans treated them with respect and kindness. While HFY watched the impossible growth of human civilization, disturbing news came from the center of the galaxy. The Zelthani Empire was facing its first real threat in over 1,000 years. Something called the Devourers had appeared from the dark space between galaxies. The Devourers were not alive in any way that the Zelthani understood life. They were machines, but not like the simple robots that most species built. These machines could think and learn and grow. They moved from star to star, consuming entire worlds to build more of themselves. They turned planets into raw materials and civilizations into energy. The Zelthani had tried to fight the Devourers with their most powerful weapons. Psychic attacks that could destroy the minds of living beings had no effect on pure machines. Energy weapons that could crack planets only made the Devourers stronger by giving them more power to absorb. Traditional battle tactics failed because the Devourers learned from every fight and adapted to every strategy. 3 outer colonies of the Zelthani Empire had already fallen. Billions of Zelthani had died or been converted into raw materials. For the Devourer fleets, the High Council was demanding that all client species provide ships and soldiers for the war effort. HFY received orders to make contact with Earth and demand their tribute. The High Council expected the humans to provide whatever small ships they had built, and to send their young warriors to die in a war they could not possibly understand. But as HFY prepared to travel to Earth, his sensors detected something that made him question everything he thought he knew about the humans he had saved. The space around Earth was not empty. It was full of activity. Ships moved between the planets like schools of fish. Space stations the size of cities orbited every world. Asteroid mines produced more raw materials than some entire star systems. Humans had not just survived and grown. They had exploded across their solar system like a wave of creative energy. And their ships were not the primitive metal boxes that HFY expected. They were strange and beautiful and completely unlike anything he had ever seen. As HFY's ship approached Earth, he realized that he was no longer traveling to save a grateful primitive species. He was about to meet a civilization that had grown beyond his wildest imagination in just 50 short years. The humans were waiting for him. HFY's ship emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. What he saw made him stop breathing for several long moments. The space around the small blue world was alive with activity beyond anything his computers had predicted. Hundreds of ships moved between the planets like a dance of metal and light. Some were as large as cities, carrying thousands of passengers between worlds. Others were small and fast, darting through space like silver fish. Space stations hung in orbit around every planet, even the cold outer worlds that should have been empty and lifeless. But what shocked HFY most was how different the human ships looked from anything he had ever seen. Zelthani vessels were smooth and elegant, built according to designs that had worked for thousands of years. Human ships looked like they had been built by a dozen different species working together while arguing loudly. Some human ships were covered in gardens that grew food during long journeys. Others had spinning sections that created artificial gravity through rotation instead of expensive gravity generators. A few ships seemed to be part machine and part living organism, their hulls breathing and adjusting to space conditions like the skin of some great beast. As HFY's ship approached Earth, he was met by an escort of 12 human vessels. The ships surrounded him but did not point weapons at his ship. Instead, they began broadcasting music and mathematical equations, and what seemed to be recipes for cooking food. It was clearly a greeting, but unlike any first contact protocol HFY had ever heard of. A communication signal reached his ship. The voice that spoke was female and calm, using perfect Zelthani language, with only a slight accent that sounded almost musical. "Welcome, Commander HFY. My name is Admiral Sarah Chen. We have been expecting you for quite some time. Please follow us to Earth Station 1 where we can speak properly." Vex-High's crystal heart skipped several beats. The humans knew his name. They knew he was coming. Somehow, they had discovered his identity and his connection to their world's salvation 50 years ago. Earth Station 1 was a massive structure that hung in space above the planet like a second moon. As Vex-High's ship docked, he could see through the station's clear walls to gardens and lakes and even small forests growing inside. Children played in parks that hung in zero gravity. Artists created sculptures from floating drops of water and light. Admiral Chen met him at the docking bay. She was older than most humans Vex-High had observed, with gray hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of many years spent looking at the stars. But her movements were confident and strong, and her smile was warm and genuine. "Commander Vex-High," she said, bowing in the formal Zelthani style. "It is an honor to finally meet the being who saved our world. We have much to discuss." She led him through corridors filled with humans of every age and color. Some were working at computer stations that seemed to respond to thoughts as much as touch. Others were building new technologies that combined metal and crystal and living tissue in ways that should not have been possible. They entered a meeting room with walls made of clear crystal that showed the Earth turning slowly below. Admiral Chen activated a privacy field and gestured for Vex-High to sit in a chair that had been built specifically for his crystalline body structure. "You know why I am here," Vex-High said carefully. "Yes," Admiral Chen replied. "The Devourer threat has reached the outer colonies of your empire. The High Council has ordered you to collect tribute ships and warriors from all client species. They expect us to provide whatever small vessels we have managed to build, and to send our young people to die in a war we supposedly cannot understand." Vex-High stared at her. "How do you know about the Devourers? How do you know about the High Council's orders? Humans are not supposed to have faster-than-light communication technology." Admiral Chen smiled. "Commander, we have known about the Zelthani Empire for over 30 years. We detected your monitoring station through gravitational analysis. We have been listening to your communications and learning your languages. We know about the crystal cities of Zelthan Prime. We know about the client species that serve your empire. And we know about the machines that are consuming worlds at the galaxy's edge." She activated a holographic display that showed the entire galaxy. Red dots marked the systems that the Devourers had already consumed. Yellow dots showed their projected path. The display was more detailed and accurate than anything in Vex-High's own computers. "We also know," Admiral Chen continued, "that your empire's traditional tactics are failing against this threat. Psychic attacks do not work on pure machines. Energy weapons only feed their power cores. Standard battle formations are useless against enemies that adapt and learn from every encounter." Vex-High felt his crystal structure growing cold with fear. "If you know all this, then you understand that resistance is impossible. The tribute ships are not meant to win the war. They are meant to buy time while the High Council develops new strategies." "No," Admiral Chen said firmly. "The tribute ships are meant to die while the Zelthani core worlds prepare to flee deeper into the galaxy. We have analyzed your empire's behavior patterns. You have never faced a threat you could not defeat with superior firepower and psychic dominance. Your leaders do not know how to fight an enemy that learns and adapts." She stood and walked to the crystal wall, looking down at Earth. "But we do know how to fight such enemies. Humans have been fighting learning, adapting opponents for our entire history. We call it evolution, and we have become very good at winning that particular war." Vex-High remained silent, trying to process what he was hearing. Admiral Chen turned back to him. "Commander, I did not ask you here to argue about tribute or to explain why we cannot help. I asked you here to make an offer. Earth does not wish to provide tribute ships to die uselessly in someone else's war. Instead, we wish to join the fight as equals and show your empire how to defeat the Devourers." "That is impossible," Vex-High said. "Humans are a young species. You have only been in space for decades. The Zelthani Empire has fought wars for millennia." "Yes," Admiral Chen agreed. "You have fought the same wars in the same ways for millennia. But the Devourers are not like any enemy you have faced before. They require new thinking, new tactics, and new approaches. They require the kind of creative chaos that humans specialize and she activated another display showing human ships in formation. They looked nothing like proper military vessels. Some seemed to be partially broken. Others appeared to be built from spare parts and salvaged materials. A few looked like they might fall apart if someone looked at them too hard. "Our fleet is ready to depart for the war zone," Admiral Chen said. "We have studied the Devourer, attack patterns, and developed countermeasures. We have weapons and tactics that your empire has never seen, because your empire has never needed them." Vexhai looked at the chaotic human fleet and felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Hope mixed with terror in equal measure. "The High Council will never accept humans as equals in this war," he said. Admiral Chen's smile became sharp as a blade. "Then perhaps it is time for the High Council to learn that the galaxy has changed while they were not paying attention. The students are about to become the teacher's commander, and class is about to begin." The combined fleet gathered at the edge of the Kepler system, where the Devourers had just finished consuming the Zelthani colony world of Christia. Vexhai stood on the command bridge of the flagship Crystal Dawn, watching the human ships take their positions in the battle formation. The sight made him uncomfortable. Zelthani military doctrine required perfect order and coordination. Their crystal ships moved in precise geometric patterns that had been tested in 1,000 battles. Each vessel knew exactly where to be and what to do at every moment. The human ships looked like they were barely organized at all. Some flew in loose groups that seemed to change formation every few minutes. Others moved alone, darting between the larger vessels like children playing games. A few human ships appeared to be broken, with sections missing or sparking with electrical fires. Admiral Corthex, the Zelthani fleet commander, activated the communication system to speak with Admiral Chen. His voice carried the cold authority of centuries of military experience. "Admiral Chen, your vessels are not following proper battle formation. Please instruct your ships to take their assigned positions immediately." Admiral Chen's reply came back calm and cheerful. "Thank you for the suggestion, Admiral Corthex, but our ships are exactly where they need to be. Human tactics work differently than Zelthani tactics, trust us." Admiral Corthex's crystal face darkened with anger. "Trust? Your species has been in space for less than a century. My ancestors were fighting stellar wars before your world even had language." "Yes," Admiral Chen agreed. "And that's exactly the problem. You've been fighting the same wars in the same ways for so long that you can't see new solutions. Sometimes the student knows things the teacher has forgotten." Before Admiral Corthex could respond, the sensors detected the Devourer fleet emerging from the dead system where Christia had once been. The mechanical ships appeared like a dark cloud against the stars. There were hundreds of them, each one larger than the biggest Zelthani vessel. The Devourers had learned from every previous battle. Their hulls were covered with armor that had adapted to resist Zelthani energy weapons. Their formations copied the most successful Zelthani tactics and improved upon them. They moved with the cold precision of machines that had calculated every possible outcome. "All ships prepare for standard attack formation Delta," Admiral Corthex commanded. The Zelthani fleet began to arrange itself in a wall of crystal ships, each one charging its most powerful weapons. The human ships did something completely different. Instead of forming neat lines, they scattered in all directions like startled birds. Some accelerated toward the Devourers at dangerous speeds. Others seemed to retreat toward the outer edge of the system. A few began spinning in place for no reason that any Zelthani could understand. "What are they doing?" Admiral Corthex demanded. "This is not tactics. This is chaos." Vexhai watched the human ships with growing fascination. There was a pattern to their movement, but it was unlike anything he had ever seen. It reminded him of the way flocks of birds flew together, each one responding to its neighbors, without any central command telling them what to do. The Devourers launched their first attack. Massive energy beams lanced out from their ships, targeting the largest Zelthani vessels. The beams were perfectly aimed, calculated to penetrate Zelthani shields at their weakest points. Several crystal ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. But the human ships were no longer where the Devourer computers expected them to be. The scattered formation that had looked like chaos was actually a complex dance. As the energy beams fired, the human ships slipped between them like water flowing around stones. Then the humans began to fight back, and everything Vex-High thought he knew about space combat became useless. A damaged human ship called the Persistence flew directly at a massive Devourer vessel. Its hull was cracked and sparking, and it looked like it would fall apart at any moment. The Devourers ignored it, focusing their weapons on more dangerous targets. Captain Marcus Torres, commanding the Persistence, waited until his ship was almost touching the Devourer hull. Then he activated something the Zelthani had never seen before. His ship's life support system became a weapon. The air and water from his ship sprayed out in a cloud of frozen crystals that somehow interfered with the Devourer's sensors and communication systems. While the massive enemy ship was blind and confused, 3 other human vessels appeared from different directions. They had been using the debris field from destroyed ships to hide their approach. Their weapons were not the clean energy beams that Zelthani preferred. Instead, they fired chunks of metal and rock and ice accelerated to incredible speeds. The improvised projectiles should not have been effective against Devourer armor, but the humans had not fired them at the armor. They had aimed for the tiny sensors and communication arrays that the machines needed to coordinate with each other. Within minutes, the giant Devourer ship was deaf, blind, and alone. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships turned their own damage into advantages. A vessel with a broken engine used its uncontrolled spin to confuse enemy targeting systems. A ship with a cracked hull vented atmosphere in patterns that looked like exhaust from a much larger vessel, drawing fire away from more important targets. Most shocking of all was the way humans treated casualties. When Zelthani ships were damaged, they retreated to preserve their experienced crews. But humans did the opposite. Damaged ships moved closer to the enemy, using their apparent weakness to get into positions where they could do the most damage. The Persistence, now falling apart completely, broadcast a message to the entire human fleet. Captain Torres's voice was calm and clear as his ship began its final approach to the largest Devourer vessel. "This is for everyone who never got to see the stars," he said. Then he began playing music over the communication channel. It was a human song about hope and sacrifice and the love between friends. The Devourers had never encountered anything like human music before. Their computers tried to analyze the patterns and meanings, but music was not logical. It was emotional and chaotic and beautiful. The alien sound waves created cascade failures in the Devourer network as their artificial minds struggled to process something that had no tactical purpose. Captain Torres crashed his ship into the enemy flagship at the exact moment when the Devourer fleet was most confused by the music. The explosion created a chain reaction that spread through the mechanical ships like a virus. One by one, the Devourers began to shut down as their shared consciousness collapsed under the weight of trying to understand something completely irrational. Within an hour, the entire Devourer fleet was drifting powerless in space. The machines that had consumed 3 Zelthani colonies had been defeated by tactics that made no sense, weapons that should not have worked, and the power of a simple human song. Admiral Corthex stared at the silent enemy ships in complete shock. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication system, still calm but now tinged with sadness for the brave humans who had died. "Because, Admiral, sometimes the most powerful weapon against perfect logic is beautiful chaos. The Devourers could adapt to any rational strategy, but they could never understand sacrifice, music, and hope." Vex-High looked at the drifting Devourer, hulks, and felt his entire understanding of warfare crumble and rebuild itself. The humans had not just won an impossible battle, they had done it using the very qualities that the Zelthani Empire considered weaknesses. Chaos had defeated order. Emotion had triumphed over logic, and sacrifice had proven stronger than self-preservation. The galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the impossible victory over the Devourer fleet, the greatest gathering in galactic history took place above Earth. Representatives from every world in the Zelthani Empire had come to honor the species that had saved them all from the mechanical plague. Vex-High stood in the main assembly hall of Earth Station 1, watching as thousands of beings from hundreds of different worlds filled the vast space. Crystalline Zelthani, gaseous Vorthak, insectoid Clixians, and dozens of other species all waited to hear what the humans would ask for as their reward. The High Council of Zelthon Prime had prepared a ceremony worthy of the greatest heroes in galactic history. They had brought ancient artifacts and rare metals and knowledge that had been kept secret for millennia. They were ready to grant the humans anything they desired: territory, technology, positions of honor in the imperial hierarchy, even seats on the High Council itself. Admiral Chen walked to the center of the hall, wearing a simple blue uniform that looked almost plain compared to the elaborate robes and armor of the other delegates. She carried no weapons, wore no jewelry, and seemed completely comfortable standing before the most powerful beings in the galaxy. "Friends," she began, using the common galactic language that allowed all species to understand her words. "We gather today not to celebrate victory, but to mourn loss. The Devourers consumed billions of lives before we found a way to stop them. Every world they touched, every civilization they destroyed, every family they separated, is a tragedy that can never be undone." The hall fell silent. Most species would have begun such a ceremony by boasting about their triumph, but Admiral Chen had started by honoring the dead. "The Zelthani Empire has ruled this galaxy for thousands of years," she continued. "Your species brought order to chaos, peace to warring worlds, and stability to countless civilizations. For this, all thinking beings owe you a debt of gratitude." High Counselor Zareth, the eldest and most respected member of the Zelthani leadership, nodded approvingly. This was the proper way for a client species to address their betters. "But," Admiral Chen said, and that single word changed everything, "we believe it is time for something new." She activated a holographic display that showed the entire galaxy. Instead of the traditional map that divided space into Zelthani territories and client worlds, this map showed something different. It displayed trade routes and communication networks, shared research projects and cultural exchanges, cooperative, defense agreements and mutual aid societies. "The Devourer invasion taught us something important," Admiral Chen explained. "No single species, no matter how advanced or powerful, can face every challenge alone. The Zelthani Empire succeeded for millennia because it brought different worlds together. But it did so by creating a hierarchy where some species commanded and others obeyed." She gestured to the assembled delegates. "Look around this room. Every species here has unique abilities, knowledge, and perspectives. The Vorthak understand energy in ways that solid beings cannot. The Clixians process information faster than any computer. The Mortai can manipulate gravity with their thoughts. Each species has gifts that others lack." High Counselor Zareth's crystal form began to glow with displeasure. "What are you suggesting, Admiral Chen? The Imperial system has maintained galactic peace for 3,000 years. "I am suggesting," Admiral Chen replied calmly, "that peace built on submission is not the strongest kind of peace. I am suggesting that cooperation built on respect is more powerful than cooperation built on fear." She touched a control, and the holographic display changed again. Now it showed a new kind of map, one that had no central capital world and no client territories. Instead, it displayed a network of connections between equal partners. "Humans offer to share everything we have learned with every species in this galaxy. Our technology, our methods, our philosophies of governance and cooperation. But we do not offer these things as gifts from superior to inferior. We offer them as contributions to a partnership between equals." The hall erupted in shocked whispers and confused conversations. Vexhai felt his crystal heart beating so fast it made his whole body vibrate. What Admiral Chen was proposing was not just radical, it was revolutionary. "This is impossible," High Counselor Zareth declared, his voice carrying the authority of millennia. "The galaxy requires order. Someone must rule. Someone must make the difficult decisions. Someone must bear the responsibility of leadership." "You are right," Admiral Chen agreed. "Someone must make difficult decisions and bear responsibility. But why should that someone always be the same species? Why should wisdom be assumed to flow in only one direction?" She gestured to Vexhai, who stood frozen in surprise. Commander Vexhai violated your highest laws to save my species from extinction. His decision was considered wrong by your society, but it proved to be exactly what the galaxy needed. Sometimes the right choice comes from the most unexpected source. Admiral Chen activated another display, this one showing detailed plans for new technologies and social systems. Humans have developed methods of government that allow millions of voices to be heard without creating chaos. We have created artificial intelligences that serve as partners rather than slaves. We have learned to turn competition into cooperation and disagreement into innovation. She paused and looked directly at High Counselor Zaref. We offer to teach these methods to any species that wishes to learn them, but we will not force our ways on anyone, and we will not accept anyone forcing their ways on us. The implications of her words hit the assembled delegates like a shockwave. Admiral Chen was not asking to join the Zelthani Empire. She was asking the Empire to join something entirely new. What you propose has never been tried, High Counselor Zaref said, his voice uncertain for the first time in centuries. Many things had never been tried until someone tried them, Admiral Chen replied. Flying had never been tried until birds learned to do it. Cooperation between species had never been tried until the Zelthani Empire made it work. Defeating the Devourers had never been tried until we found a way to do it together. She smiled, and her expression carried the same warmth that had made Vexhai decide to save her world 50 years ago. We are not asking you to abandon everything you have built. We are asking you to help us build something even better. Vexhai stepped forward, his crystal form catching the light from Earth's sun streaming through the station's windows. High Counselor, Admiral Chen speaks truth. I have watched humans for 5 decades. They do not follow the patterns we expect. From advanced civilizations, they have grown beyond our ability to guide or control them, but more importantly, they have grown beyond their need for guidance or control. He turned to face the assembled delegates. The species I saved from extinction has become the species that saved us all. They offer us not submission, but partnership, not tribute but trade, not obedience but cooperation. The hall fell silent as thousands of beings considered words that challenged everything they had believed about how civilizations should work. Finally, High Counselor Zaref spoke. If we accept this proposal, the Zelthani Empire will cease to exist. Yes, Admiral Chen agreed, and in its place, something new will be born. Something that includes the wisdom of the Zelthani, the creativity of humans, and the unique gifts of every species in this galaxy. She extended her hand toward the High Counselor in the ancient human gesture of friendship and cooperation. The question is not whether the Empire will end. The question is whether it will end by being destroyed or by being transformed into something better. As Vexhai watched, the being who had saved his species reached out to shake hands with the being whose species had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. The moment their hands touched, the old galaxy ended and a new one began. Outside the station's windows, human and Zelthani children played together in the orbital gardens. Their games a chaotic blend of crystal harmony and creative disorder. They were the first generation of citizens in a galaxy where differences were celebrated rather than suppressed, where leadership was shared rather than imposed, and where the impossible had become merely the next challenge to overcome. The students had indeed become the teachers, and the lesson they taught was that the greatest strength comes not from ruling others, but from helping them rule themselves.